Are we doing this?
We're doing this. It's
First
happening.
one. It's happening. We've hit
We're ready.
record. All right. Well, hey everyone. This is Kim Durcho at BIPAC. Really excited to be here today with my colleague and friend Liz Byrd, who runs all of our communications. You are now witnessing the first on-demand video series recording session of Advocacy in Action. We are going to go behind the curtain, not just with BIPAC staff members, but with our members, other industry experts. We're going to share best practices and truly like the actionable takeaways from the conversations that we're having pretty much every day. So I'm super excited to be here. I didn't think this day would ever come. I kind of thought that like
Yes.
this was a brainchild, Liz, of like we've been wanting to do this for so long and we're here.
Mhm.
So what are your thoughts? I mean, I'm excited.
Yeah, I mean, like Kim said, I'm Liz and I handle all the comms. So I was really excited when we did our post-election survey. And if you watched our webinar, we had a whole section or takeaway about strategic communications being important. And there were just so many great ideas that Kim and I had and so many tangents that we went off on that we knew our first advocacy in action had to be about this because there's just so many great takeaways alone in that one piece of the survey data that we could talk about. So I'm excited to dive into it.
Yeah, same here. And before we do dive into it, and I just start kind of pitching questions at Liz to pick her brain, and you guys can kind of see our regular conversations that we have because we go up on so many tangents and love to talk about comms. I just want to give a little insight into what this series is going to look like. This is something that will be available on demand on the BIPAC portal. We are going to kind of roll these out just a number of different times throughout the year. We're going to hit you with as many of these as we can. And Liz and I are going to be your main hosts. So today, Liz is playing role of host and expert guest speaker. So thanks for playing double duty, Liz.
Yes.
But yeah, we hope everyone enjoys it. Hopefully this is something that we can keep rolling and we've been really excited about. So with that, we can kind of jump into the meat of the conversation.
Yes.
Um, so like Liz said, this one is a little bit focused on our survey data. We want to kick things off with that and just kind of give a recap. And I really want to get Liz's like thoughts and responses, but then we're just going to talk general communication strategy as well, because I think beyond what we learned in the survey, there's so much we could talk about. Right, so jumping into the meat of our conversation here, I want to start with a few things from our survey data. So we consistently find that trust is really high between an employee and their employer. And in fact, in our recent 2024 post-election survey that we ran back in November, we found that over 80% of survey respondents trust employers to make the right decision regarding policy and social issues that impact the industry and community. That's really high. And it's a great data point for you to take away
Mhm.
and share with other folks. So I want to definitely mark that. But Liz, what are your thoughts about this? Like when you think about that kind of statistic at a very foundational level, how do you go about building trust through your communications?
I think, and when I first saw this stat, I was happy to see that as well. But I think a lot of people say consistency is key, and it is, but I think continuity is kind of where you want to be. So, like a series of one-off disconnected emails, they're just that. They're disconnected. And sometimes you have to send them. I'm not saying you never can, because you'll get some from me. But you want to kind of build a story with your emails. You want to build a story with your social posts, whether they're internal, external, really anything that you're doing. You want it to tie back to your overall goals and your strategy. So I think having like a drip campaign, for example, over email, over social, anywhere that ties back to the purpose and why you're trying to do it, like you're almost telling a story. And at the end of the day, we're all storytellers trying to either someone in sales is trying to get you to buy something. I'm trying to get you to click on an email. Like, Kim wants you to open a resource. Like, we're all trying to tell a story and we're all trying to get you to take that action. So it's almost just like if you're consistently getting your message out and it's not just going to feel like I'm asking you to buy something or register for something or give me money, like, it's just like a story that I want to read, not just like another story that I'm clicking delete on before I even open it. So I think that's the biggest thing that stood out to me for trust from that
Yeah.
survey.
I love that. And I think when we're telling a story, we're being authentic or our most
Hmm.
authentic selves. And that is certainly something that's going to build trust, right? If we're being genuine, we're being authentic with our communications. And I would take that a step further and say, we talk about that in advocacy as well. If you're going to go and talk to a legislator or have an employee or stakeholder have a conversation, we always tell them to tell their story because it's more memorable, it's authentic. That legislator is going to resonate with that a lot more than just hitting them with a ton of data and a really long, laundry list of, kind of regurgitating points, right?
Yeah, I mean, people might struggle to remember a stat, but they're going to remember how something made them feel. So if you can create that connection with the story, it's going to have a much larger impact and it's going to tie into that trust 100%.
Yeah, I think that remembering how it made you feel point is such a good takeaway for
Hmm.
sure. So I always love to talk about lessons learned. So anytime I'm having a conversation, I'm like, okay, so on the flip side,
Yeah.
what have you seen in communications, even if it was totally unintentional? What have you seen that actually kind of breeds a little bit of mistrust?
I don't like sending an email as like the person on the back end or even being the person who gets one where you can tell it's like someone just sent the email because they felt like they had to send you an email. Or you're feeling like I have to send an email because I haven't sent one in a bit and I don't really have anything to say right now, but I need to send an email so I'm not like losing out on like that touch point. I think take time to repurpose and don't just send something that doesn't really like have any value add, kind of like how we just talked about. Another thing is information overload. You've got, I think the current like stats that I've been reading coming out of 2024 is like you've got 8 seconds for someone who opens your email to get them to read it, which is not fun to hear.
No.
That's not a fun stat compared to the 80 or 80%, but you've got like 8 seconds. I think you've got like two or three on social media, and that might be different for internal versus like the external, where a lot of the trends that I read are coming from. But you don't have a lot of time to get someone to click on your email. So you need to value making it accessible and making the information easy to find. And like clearly, like I know what I'm getting from your email. Something that I've started doing for BIPAC emails for events is like if you click on our emails and you open them on our phone, which taking it a step back, I look at our trends and our analytics. So I know almost like 90% of the people who are reading our emails are opening them at work during the day. So when I'm creating emails, I'm creating them from the perspective that a majority are opening them on desktop. So I'm always testing how that looks on desktop. But I'm not going to alienate that 10% that's opening them on mobile. So the formatting is going to look different for them. So I don't just have the register for our event call to action button at the bottom because I've got 8 seconds. That person's only going to see it here. That button's there too at the top of the email. Kind of might look a little strange for a desktop user, like why do I see two buttons? But for the 8 second user on their phone who doesn't scroll to the bottom, they saw the button. And if the hook from the title of the event interested them, they're going to click on it anyways, and they'll read the event description on that registration platform. So by making it easy to find the link, I got them to sign up for my webinar. So that's just like an example of how you can do that. And then keeping it authentic too. Whether you're sending it kind of like how we said, keep it transparent, make sure it aligns with other things that you've been sending out, and even like what's going on in your departments or just like being aware of what's happening, which I know we all are in this space, but you want to make sure an email's timely and it doesn't kind of go out after something breaks and it misses the mark. So those are like the biggest things that I feel like can kind of take away from some trust.
Yeah, I think it's funny because I did not know that you were going to talk about the button placement, but it's the
Yes.
first thing that came to mind when you were talking about like the 8 second rule, right? It's like when
Mhm.
food falls on the floor, we have the 5 second rule. Now we have the 8 second rule of email.
Yes.
And I didn't realize it was that short. I knew people's attention spans were kind of decreasing, and that it's a really noisy environment right now on email and social. But I didn't realize it was such a short, like little snapshot of time that you have their attention. So if you don't hook them within like the first sentence or even the subject line, you might
Mhm.
have totally lost them.
Yeah. You've got a lot you have to do in 8 seconds, like just throwing together something and hoping you're getting it out in terms of just like maybe it doesn't look as pretty, but it might actually get a lot more out there versus like you spent a lot of time on a graphic, but that graphic takes up the whole screen, you lost me because I don't
Yeah.
want to scroll down. I mean, think how many emails you get during a day.
Yeah. I
It's
mean, and
insane.
well, and if I get an email, I'm just like ripping here, but like if I get an email from somebody that I know fairly well and I can see like it came directly from them, it wasn't using like a newsletter platform or something like that, I'm gonna first open that because it's a trusted sender, right? That's important, the messenger. But then if it's just a like pretty, generically designed email, even if it's just text, that might actually pique my interest more than something really heavily designed. And if you carve out those few key points right off the bat, I'm probably going to take a look at that. It might actually take an action. So now I'm like, maybe simplicity is really the trend we need to be following.
Yeah, I mean, take the work out of it for the end user. Like, make it as easy for them to just do the action you want them to do. So,
Yeah.
do as much as you can for them. It might take a lot more work for you, but I think you see the most return out of it.
Yeah. For sure. So we
Yeah,
could stay on this for a
we
long
could.
time. Like, Liz and I could talk about this for a while, but I do want to talk a little bit more about our survey and the part of it that we ran, the questions we asked about communication channel preferences. I was
Mm,
pretty surprised. We looked at this by demographic, and we also looked at it as what I would call work styles. So if you're remote, hybrid, or in person, and across all of those demographics, company-wide emails were the preferred channel by far, and then they were followed by in-person meetings or town hall kind of style events. Would love your thoughts on that, Liz, just at a
yeah.
broad level. Like, how does that kind of resonate with you?
And it's because in the digital space, it feels like you post something and then it's gone 2 seconds later. Like if you're not, I mean, think how many look how many notifications I got just from like logging on since like 9 a.m. And we're recording this at like 11:30. So like think how many notifications at the end of the day I have to sort through on my phone. I'm not gonna remember every social post that I saw, every notifications that's on there. I'm gonna clear this out and I'm gonna forget about it. But an email is something I can go back to. So I think that's where like having some SEO in your email, which you should be doing, is important because people are going back. If emails are the most important communication channel that this is coming in, it's probably because they're going back and reading the emails where you provided a valuable piece of information. So whatever you can do to make it more valuable and they can go back to, I think is really important. So like having that alternative text, using keywords, the trusted sender, like you said, like I know there's like a running joke where it's like you're trying to search for an email in your inbox and it just never comes up no matter what you type in, the person's name, nothing comes up, but maybe they weren't using those best practices to optimize it. So email out of all the other things feels the most tangible. And I feel like that's why it's the most trusted because you can go back to an email. Like people say so much during an event, you're not going to remember it all, even if you get an event recap. So I'm not super surprised on it. And I feel like just across the different work styles too, like for hybrid employees, like if your day is shifting around, that email is always there. If you're an in-person employee, you've probably got a bunch of meetings and you can just open the email, skim the top lines, like you said, flag it, file it away. It's always going to be there. So I think it's reliable and it's also like the most tangible out of all of those things.
Yeah. And I think it only surprised me, I think, because we talk so much about other opportunities to reach people and how do we break through the clutter of email and the noise. But people are telling us that they want email. So I think we all
Mhm.
need to kind of shift our brains a little bit and lean into that, but do the things you're saying, right? Like SEO. Maybe you want to explain that just a bit for folks that like me that like hear it and are like, I think I know what it means, but things like that,
So,
right? To make it stand
yeah.
out and easily findable later.
So SEO is basically like when you think of an email or not an email, a website, you're thinking like, oh, I need to like SEO, like it needs to be optimized, like my website needs to do this. So it comes up on like a Google search or something, basically. But you can take those same best practices and include them in the email. So like your images, add the alternative text because that's something that these like, and I'm not the most technical person, but like that will help come up when you're searching like candidate comparison. Like if you're emailing someone about it, it's going to bring up those messages. So if you're alternative text has the event title name in there. Like on our event emails, I'll put the event title in. It's not only great for someone who might need it for a screen reader, but if I'm searching it and for some reason I didn't include it in the body of the email, then it would still come up for someone. Not having like text over images in your emails, like actually typing out the text. And this is for all like the company-wide emails that you're using an email service provider for. Like obviously a one-on-one email that I send you, like I'm not going to be doing all of those things, but like just making sure you're making it the most accessible you can. And I feel like there's a lot of great resources out there that break down SEO if that's something that like people need to be doing in their communications.
Yeah, I just think even too at the basic level, even now I'm thinking I've just learned something. I've got my own takeaways. I'm like, I just need to be very intentional with the language, right? And if I want to send something out to somebody, whether it's a membership pitch or it's something about a resource that we've created, like I need to use the right words too, because one, it can flag it for somebody and maybe it catches their eye. But then if they go back searching for something later, maybe I pop at the top of their inbox on that search. So
Yeah.
that's a really good takeaway for even me personally. So I love that. All right. So again, we could keep talking about the survey for
I know.
hours here, but I do want to kind of take that next deeper dive with this conversation a little bit. We've talked about a lot of good foundations, building trust, but I want to know what is hot right now, Liz? Like, what are communications professionals leaning into? Like, what are the trends? I'm not the most trendy person, but what are the trends?
No, we love the trends. So for email right now, I would say personalization is the biggest buzzword you're going to find right now, which means just like tailoring the experience for the email user. So like if you've ever received an email and it's like, "Hi, Kim," they personalize that email for you. Like there's the code and you pop it in, and it just makes it feel like someone's sending an email to you. Other tools are like the in-email surveys or like pop-up things like that just make it feel more tailored in an email. That's probably the most popular thing that's happening right now. It can be hard to do, especially if your email lists are not clean. So you need to really make sure your email lists are clean before you even consider doing that, because you don't want the wrong name or no name or something funky to happen. That's not the experience you want to create. So personalization is great if you can do it right. And then if you have tools where you can like pop in like an in survey, or like I even get some emails at the bottom that are newsletters and it's like, "How helpful did you find this?" And it's like a smiley face and a frowny face, and you click one and it shows you what everyone thought of the email. So it's just like little like things like that that add like a layer to it for personalization. Other platforms, I would say video, but specifically short form video. So not like, keep it under a minute, basically 30 to 45 seconds, I would say is the most popular. And then above all, like Kim and I have kind of said before, is authenticity. Adding that humanization into your communications, I think is going to go a long way. We've seen a shift from like that corporate standard messaging, like just clean, to like more of the voice behind the brand or the voice behind the department or communication tied into it. I think Anthony Shop said it best in a webinar that we did in 2024, that faces are the new logos. So tying in the face behind the communications, and even if you can't do that in like an email that you're sending, like let your coworkers know who you are by adding them on LinkedIn. You can be posting about the work that you're doing. Kim posts weekly highlights every week on LinkedIn, and she's talking about BIPAC stuff, but she's also like tying into like some of the things that she's doing. I know you talked about like Peloton or like other things. So it's like I'm learning about Kim as not just my coworker and what she's doing for BIPAC, but like what makes Kim Kim. So like those are things that you can be doing beyond just like the things you have to do for your job. I think the more you can take the checklist out of it and make it feel like I'm doing this because I'm passionate about the work that I'm doing, and hopefully we all like our jobs. But I think if you can let people see that and see the work behind it, like Kim said, this advocacy in action, we're taking you behind the curtain. Like take people behind the curtain and let them see that. People like seeing that. They like seeing the personal aspect of it and what makes things happen and how you're approaching things. So I think that's like the biggest thing that I've seen a lot of companies and a lot of like people doing, especially on LinkedIn, but like in general communications as well.
Yeah. Well, first, shout out to Peloton, and if
Yes,
they need an influencer, this
right
is your
there.
girl. I love it. Thanks for the shout out. No, I definitely think that that's something that I've tried to lean into for my own brand, and I think that that's
Yeah.
something that before we even go out and start kind of talking about our organizations and the programs we're running, you kind of have to know what your brand is too, right? And what your, authentic self is, if you will. I will also say that when I think about being really authentic, I think it can really pay dividends in your PAC fundraising. And that's something we haven't really talked about yet on here is the PAC. But we have these conversations internally with the BIPAC team a lot. And we're finding that a lot of our members are trying to kind of re-engage potential PAC contributors, their eligible class. There's been some attrition. I think we all know that there's been some challenges the last couple years in fundraising. And I go back to my campaign days and some of the training I've done in the campaign space. It's it's really hard to ask people for money. Like I think we all know that. It can be really hard. And it's even harder if you're a candidate and you're asking for it for yourself. But people lean into that, right? People want to get behind a person, they want to get behind somebody who's genuine and authentic. And I think if you can kind of give the PAC a face, right? Coming back to Anthony's kind of good advice for us, if you can give it a face and it's not just kind of this, you know, it kind of something that's like a little bit, obtuse almost, or people can't get their arms around it. But if you make it genuine and there's people behind it, then we're in a whole different ball game as far as fundraising goes. So I think that's really something people should be leaning into, not just like on grassroots and like voter education, but also on the PAC side as well.
And it doesn't just have to be the person running the PAC space. That's when you could have your peer-to-peer program or your PAC board or like other people also being advocates too. Like it doesn't have to fall on one person. So that's when you can kind of implement those other strategies.
Totally agree with that. The messenger matters, right? I mean, that's part of this. So I know that we're starting to get a little short on time here. I want to dig in on something a little more advanced.
Yeah.
Liz, give us your thoughts on like A/B testing, targeting. You talked a little bit about some of the targeting methods, but certainly if you're doing peer-to-peer, then we're in a little bit of a different space there. But general communications, is it scary, time consuming? I know people hear like A/B testing and they're like, oh no, I don't know if that's something I have time to invest in. What are your
Yeah.
thoughts on all that?
Short answer is no, as long as you know your goals and your overall strategy. So there's a bit of a fine print with my short answer no. But I like to simplify it. A/B testing is just trying to figure out what's right. So like what is the right version, for example, in email? Like a lot of times I think people think of A/B testing as I'm just going to try 2 subject lines. It doesn't just have to be your subject lines. It can be the call to action on a button, register for this event or RSVP, like something simple as that. What do people respond to? You can try it with graphics. You can try it with the copy in the actual email, even try it with send times or post times. Um, so I think the hardest part isn't the actual putting together the A/B testing content, deciding what you're testing. It's looking at the data and deciding why the winner was the right one. So that's when you really have to go back and understand your audience. So if you're understanding kind of their perspective and why they're typically clicking on things, then it doesn't seem hard to me because you already got like the pulse on what they're thinking. So you know why that's the right answer.
Yeah. So it doesn't have to be
It
complicated. It
doesn't
doesn't have
have
to
to
be too
be.
complex. Good news.
Yeah.
Because I've always heard that and been like, oh, I don't know. That sounds like a lot of extra work, but you can keep it fairly simple and test a few different things out, it sounds like. So I kind of want to wrap here. Just anything we didn't talk about, anything from your career. You've been doing this a while, and we look at you. You are our in-house expert on communications across the board. What are your thoughts on like anything new you're seeing? Like what has kind of had the most return for you?
I mean, the comm space and why I like it is it's a fast-paced space. There's a lot changing all the time. I mean, I feel like we've seen a lot in the news about just different platforms popping up in the past like year and a half. So I always feel like I have to be learning and staying on top of strategies and best practices. So I wish I had a member portal like our members do, where I could just go and find all of this
Yeah.
stuff because I'm like signed up for so many newsletters. I feel like that's my trick for getting things. I sign up for like every newsletter imaginable from like leaders in my space. So for social, just like I'll read the blogs or like the top lines of emails from like Sprout or Hootsuite. For email, I really like Marigold by Emma. Their blog posts are really helpful for me. So I'm always just like trying to be a sponge and soak up as much as I can. And then I know my audience. So then like applying what I like from someone else and like maybe going, ooh, I don't like that, and just bringing it to what I'm doing at BIPAC. But I think the thing that helps me the most with communications is knowing like someone's only spending 8 seconds on this email. My post has gone in 2 seconds. Like, don't be afraid to test something or try something new. It might feel kind of silly at first, or you might feel like you don't know how to explain how you could have a return on this. But if I'm scared to test something, I'm never going to know. So that kind of helps me grow as a professional, like taking away the scariness of being able to test something. So I feel like that's my biggest tip for myself and others that I have to
Yeah.
remind myself. Yeah.
I think that's such a great point. I mean, the people that we work with, our member contacts, whether it's grassroots or PAC, the ones that we see that are the most successful are the ones that are willing to take a chance on something, knowing that it might not pan out. This might not work out for us, but we're willing to try. And then if it doesn't work out, we're able to be agile, and the team at BIPAC is here to help them kind of
Yes.
recraft that message or find a new channel. But I think that I mean, I think that's a great takeaway for life, right? Like we just don't, I mean, we're going to
Yes.
wrap this up with some life takeaways here, but I really do think that that's just something that, you know, if you're willing to test and willing to go out on a limb a little bit and try something new, you can have really big returns.
Yeah. And you're going to learn, even if it flops, you're going to learn something, and you can dig into why didn't that work for me? And then look, it was worth it. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
Exactly. Well, I think unfortunately that's going to bring us to the end of our time together today, Liz. But any parting thoughts? And I think just for folks that were listening into this, we're really excited to bring you more of this content. So definitely stay tuned and keep an eye on the portal and our communications for that. But Liz, any parting thoughts from you?
No, just great conversation. And I'm sure we'll be continuing this offline because this was great. And I'm looking forward to all the takeaways I can take from future advocacy and actions, because there's going to be a lot of good stuff.
And here, stay tuned, everyone.
Yes.
All right. I don't know. I guess we can stop recording. I thought that was really good. I'm super
I liked
pumped.
it too.